But welcome to our lecture series today with Patrick Sheary, among other things, our curator of historic interiors. He keeps all the period rooms looking great and historic, as well as the rest of the beautiful DAR headquarters here in Washington, D.C. If by chance this is your first time joining us, welcome. This is the program from the DAR Museum. We are a museum that operates out of the national headquarters of the Daughters of the American Revolution, a heritage organization that, among charitable enterprises, also does a lot for historic preservation. And we get to play in this building and do history and set up amazing exhibits like our current exhibit that is on its way out about E.F. Caldwell and Company and their beautiful decorative arts tradition that they established in the early 20th century. So we're here with Patrick. He's going to give us an in-depth look at production technology at E.F. Caldwell and Co. I'm very excited. This was my first exhibit I ever saw at the DAR, and it absolutely floored me. I didn't think I was going to get that excited about lights, but here I am, changed. Man, a couple technical things while you're here. If you've never used Zoom before, even if you had and you need a quick refresher, there's that little black, dark gray toolbar on your screen. If at any point you're having any troubles, you can pop something into the chat box. You'll see a button there that has a little speech bubble that says chat, and I'll see what I can do from my end. It's probably not much, but we'd like to know at least when these problems come up, and if we can help, we will. If you have any questions during Patrick's talk, please click on the Q&A button, which has the two speech bubbles overlapping. That will keep your question in a separate space. That'll make it easier for me to find and facilitate at the end of the experience, and any questions you might have. And of course, if there's for some reason you get kicked out of the chat or something like that, our contact, you can email us museum@dar.org, and we can try to find out what the problem was and help you out anyway. So I think that's all the technical stuff. Patrick, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about E.F. Caldwell.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. And thank you, Kevin and Team Education for helping me with the technical stuff to set up with all this. And also, thank you all, especially Meg Caldwell for her help and support through all this process and research, as well as people at the Smithsonian and at the Cooper Hewitt especially, but also the National Museum of American History's library and Hillwood House, as well as other private collectors and institutions, and of course the Society of Cincinnati as well for their loans and support over this whole course of this. And I really do appreciate everyone's help and everything. And this lecture is the culmination of all of that work and support that everybody has wonderfully given me. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my video so you don't have to look at my mug while I give this lecture, and you can focus on the beautiful slides. And Edward F. Caldwell and Co. Incorporated in New York City was established, for those of you who don't know, in 1895 by Edward F. Caldwell and Victor von Losberg. And E.F. Caldwell is here on the left, and in the middle picture is a very young Victor von Losberg, is on the left. Edward F. Caldwell is a very young picture of him in the middle. And of course, the work at E.F. Caldwell and Co. couldn't have happened without the hundreds of people that worked there throughout their course of their history. And this is an unknown gentleman. He's a machinist who worked at the firm, who's pictured here as well. Let me see, I think I can do, there we go, okay. The firm was famous for making fine light fixtures. As Kevin pointed out, this exhibition has made him appreciate lamps and chandeliers and sconces where he never did before, at least to this extent, other than that they provide light. But they made most of these things were made for wealthy clients. And Caldwell was also known for its large variety of accessories, like desk sets, clocks, furniture, and even telephones, if you can believe it. And the design possibilities were, of course, limitless. And these are three pages from extensive collection at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Library's collection from their design books. And they're showing you the variety of things that they had in addition to lamps. And the lamps in the center from the earlier period from the 1900s and 1910s. The picture of desk accessories on the left are from the later teens and 20s, and on the far right, things from the early to mid 30s from their later period of production. Just to give you all a variety. In order to offer such a vast array of items, though, the firm used many manufacturing techniques, some traditional like sand and lost wax casting, as well as sheet metal spinning and forging. Today, I will discuss two other production techniques the firm used, Galvano and photo etching. Finally, I will also briefly include the role electricity played in Caldwell's lighting design. So let's begin with Galvano, also called Galvanoplasty or electroforming. But today I will use the term Galvano because that's how Caldwell referred to this process. Invented in 1838 by, and I apologize for my pronunciations, but I'll do my best with some of these. Moritz von Jacobi in Russia. The galvanoplasty or process was invented, and galvano means electric, and plasty, of course, means forming or molding. And it allowed for the creation of exact copies to be made of an object. Today, it is the predecessor of somewhat of today's 3D printing technology. Galvano was versatile and used, for instance, to make metal statues for buildings and monuments, like these seen on the Paris Opera House, the Palais Grenier here, with the detail on the left of the Statue of Harmony. These were by Charles Alphonse Achille Grimery. I'm sorry, again, my French is really bad. So I do apologize for those of you who speak French perfectly. But anyway, these statues they're among the largest statues made using the Galvano process, and they're actually copper, a gilded copper. The Galvano process could also be used to make exact copies of famous objects for museums. Many museums like the Victoria and Albert and the British Museum in London, as well as the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, purchased Galvano copies of famous and otherwise unobtainable objects like those seen here. From the left to the right, the left is, for instance, this Ure. It's in the V&A collection. It's actually an 1888 copy of a 1595 original. The middle is from the British Museum, and it's the famous Golden Mask of Agamemnon. And this is a copy, a 1908 copy of the ancient original. And finally, on the right, also at the British Museum, is an astrolabe, which is an 1893 copy of an 11th century original. So you can see how detailed and exact the Galvano process could reproduce something. But just to let everyone know, Caldwell was not the only firm to use this process. Their contemporaries like Tiffany and Sterling Bronze Company of New York also used this. This slide here is the Bryant vase, and it was made by Tiffany and Co. in 1876, and this is in the collections of the Metropolitan Museum of Art today. The original silver vase was presented to the poet and newspaper editor William Cullen Bryant, and he's pictured on of course, on the left. for his 80th birthday by a group of his friends. What a nice group of friends they were, for sure. Although Tiffany did not make this vase for commercial resale, they produced 2 presentation copies, one for the Century Association, the members of which who had commissioned the original vase, and the other given to the village of Cummington, Massachusetts, Bryant's birthplace. I don't know what the village of Cummington, Massachusetts would do with such a large vase, but I'm sure they displayed it someplace prominent. But flanking the vase in the center are the master molds used for the used to make the Galvano copies. These are made out of brass, and they show black and white because the pictures are taken in black and white. And these are also at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The Galvano tanks, along with all the manufacturing workshops, were located at Caldwell headquarters in New York City, of course, at 36-40 West 15th Street. On the right, 2 workmen are placing their master molds into the Galvano tanks. There were 7 steps for making a Galvano part. So we'll go through them briefly, quickly. The first was, first, a mold of the original item had to be made from a flexible material like gutta percha, which is a natural occurring latex. Once hardened, an exact impression is left on the inside of the mold. Step 2, the mold is then coated with graphite paint so that it becomes electrically conductive. Step 3, wires are attached to the outer edges of the mold and suspended in a sulfite bath. And you can see the gentleman doing that right now. They're preparing that for that. And step 4, a metal bar like copper, bronze, or silver is placed into the bath and then connected, in both the mold and the bar, the metal bar, are connected to batteries, which then create an electrical charge. Step 5 happens within the bath, the sulfite bath. The negatively charged graphite attracts the positively charged metal, and small beads migrate to coat the surface of the mold. And here we can see on the back of this is a plate, a decorative plate made by Caldwell. And you'll see, if you look very carefully, you'll see in the depressions of the back, you'll see these little bead nodules all over the place here. They're all over here. And this is the telltale sign of Galvano, because as the metal precipitates across the bath, they form these little beads, and the little beads accumulate onto the surface of the mold. In step 6, once completely covered, the mold is removed from the bath. From this first master metal mold, more copies can be made whenever desired. So copies can then be electroplated in any desired surface coating like gold or silver. They can also be chemically patinated to any look, and they can also be solid too. They didn't have to be plated. This particular Galvano plate by Caldwell is actually a solid silver. So. The master molds are seen here are from the Caldwell design books. They were interchangeable and can be identified if you look through the design books with any regularity. You can actually identify these various parts on lamps and decorative items. The Galvano process dispensed with the extra finishing time it took to hand chase the metal with special tools after traditional casting to articulate design details. Items like this large chandelier on the left were made using a variety of techniques, including traditional casting, metal spinning, and Galvano. The drawing on the right shows this. The top canopy and the drawing up in this area here toward the ceiling part, is the as well as the decorative rings supporting the glass globe are identified as Galvano. And the other items are also identified in turn as either being cast or spun. And this is from the New York Public. This is in the New York Public Library collection. They have a collection of these fabulous production drawings, which certainly were used throughout the firm's history to help in assembling and constructing any item that the firm would be making. Caldwell made all sorts of decorative items using this process. And the best known for those of us who have studied Caldwell are the bowls, like the one shown here on the left. They were popular display items, one of which can be seen circled in this townhouse picture from the early 20th century on the right. They actually made great nut containers, as some advertisements describe them as being used for during a card game in the swing age. Production actually began in 1903, and Caldwell made many designs in different styles. 8 designs are shown here in the order books from 1907 on the left. Many were made as samples, meaning that they were made to display in the showrooms, so that people could come see them in the showrooms and place an order if you were so inclined. On the right are 4 completed bowls. Each of these particular bowls had a spun metal liner. Caldwell recreated these from ancient Roman examples in the Boston Museum, in the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, and from other museums as well. But most of them were taken from the BMFA. On the left are 2 original terracotta molds made in Aranzo, Italy. And it's a ware that's often referred to as Argentine ware. These ceramics are characterized by delicate scenes pressed into the terracotta of gods and goddesses usually dancing about, and putis making wine, etc. All the themes that ancient Romans liked. Anyway, Caldwell took impressions from these originals on the left and used them, for instance, to make the covered bowl on the right. In 1905, members of the Cornish, New Hampshire artist colony celebrated 25 years of its founding by sculptor Augustus St. Gaudens and his wife Augusta. As part of the celebration, they honored the St. Gaudens with a play entitled A Mask of Hours, The Gods and the Golden Bowl. The committee preparing the event presented a special gift of a golden bowl, seen here, given by the gods to the St. Gaudenses, and it's preserved today at St. Gaudens National Historic Site. However, let's turn to the more worldly ways, because the gods who actually made this bowl were artisans working at Caldwell. Architect Charles Platt, who was part of the committee that oversaw the mask, this whole presentation, ordered this bowl from Caldwell in 1905 after seeing one on display in their showrooms. Pictured here is the original Argentine terracotta mold from which it was taken, and a sample from the Caldwell design books. Caldwell merely referred to this pattern as Galvano number 166. They just had they had a variety of different styles, and they were all referred to by number, which is no surprise because it made it easier for those producing it to just pull the proper molds. Galvano pattern number 166 proved popular with clients, and Caldwell made many as can be seen with this next example, kindly provided from a private collection. Upon leaving the Fine Arts Commission in 1919 to become Assistant Director of the U.S. National Park Service, Arno B. Karmar, as you can see on the left, of course, received this Argentine bowl from his commission colleagues. Again, Charles Platt was on the committee to find a suitable gift. I likely ordered this example from Caldwell for presentation. Again, remember, you could see these displayed in their showrooms in Manhattan. As can be seen in this example, Caldwell's Galvano Argentine bowls came in a variety of finishes. This one happens to be silver plated and is in a private collection today. So, you know, you had whatever you wanted, Caldwell could make for you. If you wanted one out of solid silver, you could get that, or solid bronze, you could get that as well. It was just up to the client's taste. Caldwell also made many items using this process, like boxes, desk sets, and lamps, to mention but a few, and these are a variety of different ones in varying private collections. Another popular Caldwell line was champlevé, or enamel work. The practice of champlevé can be traced back to ancient Egypt, but it flourished in France, Belgium, and Germany during the 11th and 12th centuries. Champlevé is made by carving out channels into the metal and then filling the voids with powdered vitreous enamel. The enamel is melted and fused into place, and once cooled, the surface is then polished smooth. This is a fabulous example of a reliquary box, French example from the 13th century, preserved now at the Met, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Caldwell began making champlevé in the 19-teens. As you can see in this page from the design books. During the 1920s and 30s, company designers Clarence Barber and Albert Nestle visited museums like the Metropolitan Museum of Art to draw motifs from original examples. To replicate the detailed historic designs, Caldwell used the photo etching process. Medieval reliquary boxes, tabernacles, candlestands became humidors, letter boxes, and electric lamps for modern clients. Photo etching, to get back to this technique, is a process that dates to the 19th century. It is a controlled corrosion process used to produce complex decorative motifs in very fine detail on the surface of metal. And it's still used today in the IT world to produce very fine components for computers and devices like that. However, Caldwell used this process to etch designs into items being prepared for champlevé enamel. The technique took the place of having to laboriously hand cut the design into the metal with special tools, as was done in the medieval originals. And so there were 6 steps to producing this, to doing this. The metal surface is first coated with a light sensitive varnish or resist material. Step 2, the photo negative of the design acting as a stencil. And you can see here, these are stencils from the Caldwell design books showing all the different designs. There were a lot more, trust me, but this is just a sampling. These stencils would be superimposed over the varnished area to be etched. Then step 3, the whole assembly is treated to UV light for a few hours, and the exposed varnish hardens, whereas the unexposed area under the stencil negative remains soft. Step 4, the stencil is then removed, and the soft varnish is washed away, exposing the bare metal. Step 5, the item is then acid washed, which dissolves the exposed metal. And the depth of the depression into the metal it depends upon how long the acid remains on the surface. If you left it on too long, you'd wind up getting a tracery instead of just a depression. And finally, step 6, the final step is once the etching is complete, the remaining varnish or resist is removed and ready for the application of enamel, which could be a step 7 in the final process. Caldwell's contemporaries, just to let everyone know, also used, like Tiffany and Co, for instance, also used this process to great effect. Like these 2 items by Tiffany and Co, a coffee pot from 1879 and a saucer from 1878. And both of these are in the collection at the Met. Scholar and curator Barbara Drake Boehm of the Metropolitan Museum of Art was the first to write about Caldwell's Champlevé. She noted that though rooted in historic models, Caldwell adapted the form to meet the needs of modern clients. For instance, the stunning French tabernacle, also in the Met's collection, dating from between 1220 and 1230, opens to reveal a crucifix in various stages of Christ's life. Originally, tabernacles like this would have held a chalice. Whoops. Caldwell's version has been adapted for use as a stationary case, as seen in this one in a private collection. Note the compartmentalized interior. For paper, Boehm also notes the decor of this is a mixture of different imagery from religious to chivalric. And the addition of semi-precious and checked glass gemstones certainly appeared to the wealthy client wanting to obtain old world charm for his new world mansion or her new world mansion. Other examples of adapted uses are seen in this clock and bookends. The clock features chivalric decorative motifs like the heraldic coat of arms along the base and stylized dragons supporting the clock itself. Each of those dragons are holding a pearl in their mouth. It's very charming, actually. The bookends are in a private collection, look like tabernacles or the sides of reliquary boxes. Each figure holding a scroll saying in Latin translates as, I'm not going to pronounce the Latin because I'll just mess it up. So I'll just say it in English. One says, life without literature is death. And the other says, the torch of glory kindles the mind. Also, as we look at the surfaces on these items, you'll notice the dark blotches. These are not defects, actually. They are intentionally applied aging to make these items look medieval. Photo etching process also allowed for interchangeable design motifs to serve a client's preference. This can be seen in this blotter cover. The master stencil is shown on the left features a central figure on a horse clad in a sumptuous cape. Another option seen on the right from a private collection shows another choice for the central panel, a figure mounted on a horse and sporting a crown. He's also very sumptuous looking too, even the horse is, oh my God. Anyway, many versions of these popular portfolios are known in a variety of designs and colors. And this particular one dates from between 1919 and 1920. Further evidence that photo etching allowed for a great variety of design can be seen in this box. The central figure panel just seen on the blotter cover could be reused. And it found its way on, of course, the top here. Also, the borders found their way onto the sides of the box, and you can see the designs. And they could be the stencils could be cut and remade into any size or whatever that was needed for depending upon the application. This particular box dates from the early 20s and is in a private collection. A tour de force is this humidor dating from the mid 1920s. And though the humidor top on the left looks the same at quick glance to the photo of it in the design books. On the right, there are differences in detail. The most obvious change is the central panel, and some of the pictorial roundels in the corners have different locations. Changes like this could represent the client preference or choices actually made by Caldwell designers. It just depended. One of the best Caldwell Champlevé clients were Walter and Lucy Rosen, who hired the firm to supply many of the lighting and decorative items for their mansion called Caramore, today preserved as a museum. And I'd like to thank Caramore for supplying these really nice photos. The Caramores collected Caldwell Champlevé for use in their house, and it's all over the place. And in one particular place, it's displayed here on the writing table in what's called the Burgundian Library. You can see the Champlevé desk set featuring a blotter cover, a stamp box, an inkwell, a cigarette box, and of course, it wouldn't be complete without the tabernacle letter cabinet. Also, by the way, the lamps, all the lighting in this picture is also Caldwell. Just FYI, in case you're wondering. I must say, after describing both Galvano and photo etching, though these processes made production somewhat easier and allowed for interchangeable designs and parts, etc. There was still much handwork required to finish these items. They had to be hand assembled, they had to be finished up. The different finishes had to be hand applied. Of course, some were chemically applied too. But there was an awful lot of handwork that had to be done. You know, these techniques and these processes provided the foundation or the basic work for each individual item, but it in no way, like at Tiffany or Sterling Bronze Company, you know, they all use these processes to move things along so that the client could get something in a timely time. Instead of 5 months to make a tabernacle, it might just take a few weeks. If you did it all by hand, you know, it would take a long time. So, you know, this was all, time was money, and all of this, you know, all of these techniques we use to great effect, but they in no way, you know, denigrate the quality or the importance of these items as works of art and as a cultural expression. Had a little moment here with the electricity thing. So anyway, when Caldwell and Victor von Losberg founded the firm in 1895, electricity was new. From the earliest designs, the firm embraced this new technology. Thomas Edison established the first power station in the United States in 1882 at Pearl Street in Manhattan in New York City. Service was limited and only available to the very wealthy, like J.P. Morgan, who was an investor, and I'm sure a special wire went right to his mansion. But you can see here in the picture, these two slides, these two images, Thomas Edison contemplating, for some reason, he's contemplating this light bulb. I wonder what he's thinking. He was also called the wizard because he invented so many different other things. But on the right is even more interesting. There's this model, this 1920s model of the Pearl Street generating plant, which burned down a few years after it was constructed. This particular model was made in the 1920s from memory, and it is now preserved at the Smithsonian. So you can actually go see it. I think you can go see it today. I think it's still on exhibition in the American History Museum. Back to our two subjects, E.F. Caldwell and Victor von Losberg. When they founded the firm in 1895, people experienced electric power in public works like electric streetcars and electric lighting. So you have to realize too that electricity, the adoption of electricity in this country, but also in the world, was not a foregone conclusion. We take electricity today for granted, but it was not actually seen as something that would overtake the then other sources of lighting. For instance, a gas light fixture or a kerosene burning fixture. These were seen as tried and true, and people were actually afraid of electricity. But it didn't seem to bother people too much when riding around on a streetcar like these depicted here, or lighting up the street in the evening, like seen on the left. Perhaps because the electricity was far above your head and you weren't afraid that you'd get electrocuted. But people were afraid of that, and among other things. If you watched Downton Abbey, you'd probably remember, Granny coming into the room and taking out her fan and shielding herself from the electric sconce fixture, and her son coming in said, "Oh, mother, what are you so worried about? We've been electrified for a whole year now." And she still couldn't, she was still trying to get used to the whole concept. But people just didn't understand what electricity was. So it took a while for electricity to be adopted. And so for Caldwell to adopt electricity very early on was quite telling, because not every firm that made lighting adopted electricity right away. Caldwell embraced it pretty quickly, and they made much fewer gas fixtures. Although they offered them, they did not. They were not even in this early period, they were not by far. They were not that popular to them. Anyway, this patented bronze chandelier by the firm dates to the late 1890s, and it's in a private collection. Here, the electric light bulb is celebrated for its new technology, with 4 exposed bulbs sheathed in check glass covers. Behind the glass bead panels resembling trellis work are 6 electric light sockets. Electricity offered designers greater options because the electric wires could be pulled through thin tubing and installed in tight spaces. These designs show a great variety of items offered by the firm, and many of the Caldwell's early designs in the 1890s and 1900s, when these pages date from, were rather outrageous and very creative and unusual. Caldwell exploited new technology in many ways. This is especially apparent in switches that they designed and patented. Between 1901 and 1915, they patented 4 special switches. These special switches relate mostly to candle cups. fitted with a spring switch that are engaged when the cup is rotated clockwise. So on the left is the patent application from 1915 that shows such a switch. And if you look carefully below the candle, the electrified candle is the light bulb, then the electrified candle, of course, and then there's the candle cup. And inside there's this cross sections and all that of this special switch. So on the right, so that sconce on the right, if you reach up and turn that candle cup, it actually clicks. And there's a switch in there that rotates, and it's on a spring action, and it rotates and it clicks. It'll click on the light bulb. So you have to do each one individually, and then you rotate it again and it will shut it off. Rather ingenious in case Madame she found herself at her dressing table and just didn't want to get up and flip the switch next to the door, so she could just reach up and voila, she'd have light. Anyway, Caldwell also excelled in concealed switches as well. This large candelabrum, or girandole, originally from the Patterson House in Washington, D.C., is a great example of this. A large porcelain operating switch is concealed within the base. Turning the finial that you see in the middle between the scrolls, once 4 bulbs will light, and then again, all the bulbs will light. And the final turn shuts everything off. So, you know, they were very creative, and it took a lot of, they had, of course, an electrical department there, and they had master electricians who could wire these things up to do this type of special stuff. And you don't see this quite that often with other electric lighting firms. But Caldwell, really mastered this very well. So I wish to, with all this said and done, I wish to conclude that modern production methods, as well as the latest technology, played an important role at Edward F. Caldwell and Co. Their innovative use of Galvano and photo etching processes created the latest electrically powered lamp or an enameled humidor in historic and later Art Deco styles for the modern client. This blending of old world design with modern techniques won them many awards. As you can see, there's this award, this collection of medals and an award in this photo on the left, on the extreme left. It specifically talks about their blending of historic and modern technologies to create something new. And they garnered a lot of critical acclaim for this. And one critic, so much so that one critic in 1917 described them as truly setting the egg on end, which must have been the latest fashionable statement of the day. But anyway, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this. And I'll turn this back over to Kevin for any questions and answers.
Very, very interesting stuff, Patrick. Thank you so much. I certainly got a lot deeper dive into the science behind it. We have some video in the exhibit about it, but it just helps when someone's explaining it to you, you know. And I think this whole exhibit, I've been so surprised how much of it is about science and not just the art, and how interconnected they are, specifically with Caldwell. Great. So right now we have time for some question and answer. So if you want to pop a question into the chat now that we're at the end, or if you want to pop something into the question and answer, you've got Patrick hostage right now, so you might as well take advantage of it. So any questions about Caldwell, about the decorative arts, about the exhibit currently? I did find myself wondering about halfway through, you were talking about some of the interplay between Caldwell and Tiffany & Co. And I was wondering if there's an alternate future or alternate past, where the movie is called Breakfast at Caldwell's.
Yeah, well, there could be. I mean, Caldwell and Tiffany, they all knew each other. I mean, they were all in the same circles. So they're in the order books, which are now preserved at the New York Public Library. And you can see, there's also, you can also see them in microfilm, both at the New York Public Library and at the Cooper Hewitt at the Smithsonian. They did collaborate on some lighting. And you see in the order books, there's notations that describe Tiffany shades and Tiffany bases and Tiffany this and Tiffany that. So they did employ and Favreau glass as well. So they did use Tiffany's. And Tiffany also used some Caldwell bases too on some of their lamps, which I'm sure is going to blow some people's minds. But there are some Caldwell bases with having Tiffany art glass shades. So yeah. So it's the way of the world. You know, people collaborate. They don't make things in vacuums. So you know.
Absolutely. I do find it interesting though, because I think of this era as sort of being the peak of the cutthroat businessman, you know, the early corporations. And so it's so refreshing and actually very inspiring to see that these two titans of decorative arts and design collaborated, and frequently too. That's really cool.
They did. And the same goes true for decorators, French and Co, Marquet and Co, etc. All these different people. They are, you know, Stanford White, the architect, and other architects from that period. They all collaborated to create these fabulous interiors, and as well as structures too. That we all, those buildings that survive today, we all continue to enjoy. So
I have a question from Allison here. Thank you for throwing something in. So Allison wants to know if they did any medals for presentation, and then are there sample books available online to see more of their work, or where would you recommend, besides our exhibit before it closes, to see more Caldwell stuff?
Yes, the design books, the surviving design books. You have to remember Caldwell was in business for decades, and they they produced a lot of paperwork, and they had lots of designs that were drawn out, were both working drawings as well as photographs and things. But the photo books that survive, and that only represents, as far as I can tell, a fraction of what was, because when the firm went bankrupt, everything got either thrown. That's what happens with American businesses. Things get thrown away. They're not seen as relevant anymore. Even as the company still continues, they purge and do things like that. Anyway, what survives, the order books survive, like I was just mentioning, and those are the originals of those are at the New York Public Library, and you can see them also in microfilm, which is usually how they prefer you to look at them. The design books that I was showing you today with the black and white photos and all that, those are 100 design books. That they're binders, and they're huge. It's a huge collection. Those are all at the Cooper Hewitt, and if you want to see those, the Cooper Hewitt, the Smithsonian has scanned them all, or most of them, and they've put them up online. And if you go to the Smithsonian's website, the Cooper Hewitt's website actually, or just do a Google search for Caldwell, it will come up, and all the design, everything your heart's content will be there, and you'll be able to browse them and search. And do all that, and so you'll be able to see. What was the other part? There was something about
if they did medals for presentation, medals with a D.
Medal. I don't think I haven't seen any, but that doesn't mean they. Oh, actually, I think that there are some medals in. Meg Caldwell might know. If she's listening, she could chime in. I think there are some in the design books. What they're for, I don't know. But I think there are some, yeah.
So another question here from Mary. And I think this is, because I love that this exhibit has so many pieces from other museums, especially here in DC. It's almost, many of them are very close to us, so it's almost like a neighborhood exhibit in a weird way. But Mary wants to know, how many of these items have survived in private collections or continue to be used as originally intended, or are they just mostly found as display places in a museum?
Oh, no, there's Caldwell. Oh, there's a lot of Caldwell that's in private collections that I had the privilege of seeing, and people still use them they'll still have electric lamps that light a table or a room, because they still function. They're more ornate than you get today, but they still function as a regular modern electric lamp would. So yes, there's a lot of stuff that's Caldwell was in business for a long time, so they made countless things. And so you can see Caldwell for sale all the time on different websites for antiques and auctions and places like that. So a lot of it survives more than just in museums, although it's wonderful to see them preserved in their original settings, like at Hillwood, for instance, where Fabulous lives, Marjorie Merriweather Post's house, see how she used it and displayed it in her house. Or at the Society of Cincinnati, where the Andersons, they ordered it and used it for their house to see it there. It's nice to see these things in their original context as well. So yes, it's everywhere, and you can see it everywhere.
And in terms of the pieces still being used for their original intention, if I remember correctly, you will say borrowed some Caldwell pieces from around our building.
Yes, yeah, DAR has Caldwell lighting, and we still use it all the time. It lights hallways and rooms, and few people ever notice a light fixture unless it either A, doesn't work, or it B, falls off the ceiling. So maybe now you'll look up and wonder who made that light fixture if you're in a historic building.
Certainly, that was a big takeaway for me, is when I go through historic buildings now, I'm much more attentive to electrified sources and lighting as well, just because you never really think about it, even when you're looking for stuff to look at.
Absolutely.
So another question from Allison, did Caldwell hallmark their lamps and other decorative items?
Yes, there were marks. They didn't mark everything. I can't tell you percentage wise. If Meg's listening, maybe Meg could chime in and tell you. But there were, I think, 4 marks. There was the most famous mark is the C in the diamond, and that's usually stamped or cast into the backs of sconces, and in the escutcheons on ceilings, to chandeliers or canopies, as they're called, as well. And that's where you look for them. There's also the stenciled engraved mark, which says Edward F. Caldwell and Co. or Edward F. Caldwell and Co. Incorporated, because they were incorporated in 1914 after E.F. Caldwell died and left the firm to Victor von Losberg and the Caldwell family to run. And there's also, there is also very early, and I can't date it. I haven't been able to date it, but I've only ever seen it on the earliest pieces. It's E.F. Caldwell and Co. in 2 concentric circles, kind of like a frame, and it's stamped into a surface. And you see that it's not a common mark, but you do see that on very early items. And then, of course, there's later a mark, which is from the 30s and later. I think it's 30s and later. It might be from the 40s and later, but it's actually, I think it's post World War II. It's decals. There's E.F. Caldwell. Oops, sorry, hold on.
That room has the automatic lighting and it shuts down sometimes.
This is the problem with technology sometimes. Anyway, so they did mark things, and they marked things in varying ways, but they didn't always mark everything. So if it isn't marked, that doesn't mean it's not by them. There's also parts, and you have to start to learn to recognize, if you want to know more, you look in the design books and see. And if it's not in the design books, that doesn't mean anything either, because they made a lot of stuff. So
that's really cool. So Patrick, you do so much research and work constantly at the DAR Museum. You're always working in the period rooms around the building. We have rotating exhibits every year that involve different amounts of work. And so there's got to be a lot of things stuffed into your brain at any given time. And what made Caldwell stand out? And what, as a professional, are your takeaways that you'll sort of keep with you as you move on to other projects?
Well, I think what I like about Caldwell is just what the exhibition is trying to tell people, is that I like the fact that they made all these these fabulous quality items. But they used the latest technology and the latest techniques, and they adopted electricity pretty early on. And whereas some went kicking and screaming into the modern era when the switch from, we'll say, gas, for instance, or fuel powered technologies switched slowly, if somewhat begrudgingly sometimes, to electricity. So I like the melding of the tech. I like technology, as early technology, as well as these beautiful classically inspired items. And also, they made fabulous. One could do a whole lecture and an article on all their Art Deco stuff too, because they did some beautiful modernist things. Rockefeller Center. If you go to Rockefeller Center in New York, you'll see all the lighting there. Well, a lot of it, most of it, is Caldwell. It's still there and being used as it was intended. So, yeah, they Victor von Losberg didn't like modernism. But the firm hired one specialist in Art Deco, and he was in charge of that division. So, but they did fabulous, and a lot of it is based on French stuff. They imported a lot of things from Europe, France, and copied that stuff too. So, there's no copyright on it. So, why not? Just, it's the way it was. So, yeah. So that's my take on it.
No, that's great. It's like, what did John Lennon say? That good artists borrow, great artists steal, something like that.
Yeah.
and they had so much diversity.
It's a business world,
Yeah. Well, and then I was also really impressed, and just walking through the exhibit that's in the DAR museum right now, their range of influences is so huge. It's like a global list of influences, because there are things inspired by East Asia, by ancient Egypt, by French, high arts and fashion. And I think it's so cool that you can go through and just see, sort of, a lot of times we associate eras like the Art Deco era, that's all you would see was Art Deco style. And this really diversifies my image of that portion of the past, or that early 20th century, of just how vibrant these very wealthy homes must have been to be inside.
Oh, yeah. Well, you bring to mind, and they're on exhibit. They're loaned to us from the Smithsonian, the Kupi-Huit, these wonderful light fixtures. It's a presentation drawing of these. It was for, I forget which theater in Detroit, but they're all in the Mayan style. So, you've got ancient America as well represented. Yeah. Wow. It's amazing, and they had a large research reference library, so of showing all different types of styles and traditions. And so they would consult this library of books, and they also had a rare book collection too. And so, of architecture and all that. So they had the designers there, who are artists in and of themselves. They're all artisans there. You couldn't work for Caldwell and not have experience. You were expected to present, whether you were an electrician or whether you were a designer of artistic designer. You had to present a portfolio in order to be considered to work there. So it was not, it was pretty high end stuff.
So cool. Any other questions? We're coming up on our hour here, but if anyone had any other questions, sort of last minute before we wrap up for the day. I quite enjoyed this. If you're not aware, the Caldwell exhibit that's in the museum right now, we are open to the public. You can come by and see it anytime. It is only going to be there for this month. And then the exhibit space will be shifting into our next exhibit, which we're all very, very excited about. But some sadness as well to see the Caldwell stuff leaving, especially for me, because I've only seen it for a few months.
All good things must come to an end. That's how come we appreciate it better, Well,
and then they'll go back to their homes where they can still be seen, and the Caldwell pieces that you took off the walls in our building will go back on the walls, and we have the lovely Caldwell.
You won't be walking around in the dark.
Yeah, some of the hallways will have a little bit more brightness to them in the winter. but it's very exciting. And of course, we have a ton of stuff coming up with the DAR Museum. We have virtual tours right now for the holidays. There's a special exhibit in the building currently. And we will be very excited to share with you all the things that we're doing in 2022 as well. Patrick, anything else you wanted to share with the visitors?
No, just thank you for coming and all that. It was a pleasure today.
All right, so now the credits are rolling. Thank you guys for coming. Please feel free if you have any other questions to email us, museum@dar.org. You can check us out on our website, on our socials, anything like that to stay up to date on what we're doing. And thank you so much for continuing to support the DAR Museum.